So, what are our buyers and sellers really thinking about when it comes to housing right now? So, my name is Alan Richardson. I'm the managing broker here at MaxOne Realty and Realtor Partners. And I really want to jump into the whole dynamics and thought process about what do the buyers and sellers really think that is happening in our marketplace right now. So, I find that a lot of times real estate professionals, we make a decision about how the market is, what client expectations are, that kind of stuff, without actually stopping and asking them. So today I want to kind of go over the process of what are the sellers and buyers really telling us right now. So there's two recent studies done, and in there it talks all about the expectations, the thoughts, the motivations behind what's driving our market and behind what those buyers and sellers are looking for today and how we can service them. So, but what are our consumers really thinking? So, first of all, like when it comes to pricing, what do consumers think that's going to happen with home prices? So, right now, about 55% of buyers and sellers think that it's going to increase. Only 42% of realtors think that, or real estate agents in the real estate community think that it's actually going to increase. When it comes to home prices, realtors, about 30% of realtors say that property values are going down versus actual consumers only expect about 16% of them think it will go down. So there's kind of a disparity between the real estate community and what a lot of our buyers and sellers are thinking. And honestly, I think the buyers and sellers are more on point here than a lot of the folks in the real estate community. Now, one thing that I did find pretty interesting is that you know they asked buyers and sellers and agents, is it a good time to buy a home? And right now, 73% of home buyers said, yeah, it's a good time. 66% of sellers said, yeah. And 77% of agents all said that it's a good time to buy a home. What's interesting is those numbers almost match up exactly with, is it a good time to sell a home? So right now, basically 3/4 of our buyers, sellers, and agents all think that this is a good time to buy and a good time to sell. Now, when it comes to overall pricing, are they expecting that the homes are going to be selling for up or down? And this is kind of based on your own expectations, right? So when it comes to, do you think that you will buy a home above asking price? Well, only about 16% of buyers think so, but nearly 27% of sellers think that they will, right? Most folks, a little over half, think that it's going to be at asking price. And I think that's pretty realistic as well. Um, like is it going to be a better or worse year for real estate? And almost unanimously, 2/3 of both buyers and sellers say it's going to be a better year for real estate. Now, what are the big factors that buyers and sellers think that's really going to be driving our market? One is interest rates. I don't think they're wrong there at all. The other is overall economy, economic growth, that kind of stuff. After that's inflation, and then supply. I think supply actually carries a much bigger weight, but this is what our consumers are expecting. So again, this is more about us understanding and knowing on there. Now, when it comes to like motivations for buying and selling, those are really not that different than past years. A big percentage, 29% of buyers and sellers want to upgrade to a bigger home. Then you get into all the normal things, right? The 9 Ds: death, divorce, diploma, life events that really affect the decision on whether to buy or sell. Now, when you ask our consumers, what is the biggest challenge, especially on the buy side? And so for our buyers, biggest challenge, and please pay attention to this, real estate community, the number one challenge buyers have is finding the right home. And if you actually, dig a little bit deeper, you'll find that, almost 3 out of 4 buyers found their home online somewhere. Whereas my personal feeling is we should be the ones helping them find their home. We should be much more involved in that process. So number one is finding the home. Number two, budget. And we have seen budget increase more over these past few years, but affordability is a really, really big deal. After that, interest rate, and then moving expenses, or just the moving process, right? Is that really what's kind of going on? Now, how long are, especially on the buy side, how long are our buyers looking? So the total time spent from starting to look to end is somewhere in the 3 to 4 month range. Uh, Please pay attention to this, real estate folks. Right, you've got 3 to 4 months to get somebody in a home. Once you find out that someone's interested in buying a home, I see that in the real estate community, we take a much too passive approach. We need to be much more interactive and ready to jump out there. If you don't get them in a home in 3 or 4 months, they're going to fire you. And so please understand that. Now, what is what are the very important characteristics of the homes that they're looking for? This one is actually a recent change, like in the last 4 or 5 years, really, kind of thing. That is the number one thing is they want a walkable neighborhood. They want a sense of community. They want to be, conveniently located. For a lot of people, they are still working from home, or they're working at home from parts, like parts of their work week, that kind of stuff. So the overall neighborhood and condition of the neighborhood, that's really kind of turned out to be a pretty important factor. We hear all the time that folks are like either love or hate an HOA, but the reason that the HOAs do continue to do well is they protect property values, and the neighborhoods look nice, that kind of stuff. Now on the seller side, what do you think is the biggest challenge when selling a home? And this is one that's different for real estate agents versus for sellers, because the sellers, their biggest challenge is getting the home ready to sell. We have to understand what kind of stressors and pressure that puts on the sellers, how disruptive that is to their entire life. Now, after that, their next biggest challenge in their minds is negotiation, negotiating offers. That kind of stuff stresses our sellers out. Now, the third biggest thing that they feel is going to be what's happening with interest rates. And I get that as a seller, you're worried about how many people are going to come and be able to buy, but then they turn around and they're the buyers too. So I get that, and that will continue to be a very important thing. Now, for our sellers, what do they think is going to be the biggest factor for affecting the speed of sale? And they're right in that it's listing price. The sellers, understand that the most important factor is price. Now, it doesn't mean they're going to be really easy to give up on that price, but they understand that that's it. After that, it's economic conditions and those kind of things. Now, if you look at our sellers right now, the average seller is 47, 48. Now, it depends on how you break that down, right? Because that just means that the largest seller segment is between 40 and 49, right? Like they make up the biggest single, like 40 to 49 makes up almost 47% of our sellers. Now that only makes, but we only, that demographic is only 16% of the population. The largest group of population that we have are our millennials, and those are the folks, under 30, that kind of stuff. It's the single largest population group are our millennials right now. So it doesn't mean that we don't have sellers in every age group. That's just the largest segment right there. Our average seller right now is staying in their home 14 years. And honestly, that's pretty long. It's longer than it has been in some past years. During times of economic strife, we see where those numbers tend to go up. But right now, it's about 14 years. It is pretty consistent with that for the last 3 or 4 years on here. Now, the good news for most of our sellers is the vast majority of our sellers also are buying. Do they move up? Do they downgrade? Do they upgrade? What we see is that, about a third of sellers upgrade, a third of sellers downgrade, and then you have another third that kind of like side grade, meaning they don't really, they just want a new home. They didn't really change on size or square footage, price, any of that kind of stuff. So, we do have a lot of folks who say they want to downgrade, but then they don't actually end up doing it. And a lot of this really does, it's very common sense, right? You downgrade when the kids move out. As far as size, you may not downgrade price wise. And then when you're having the kids and you need a little bit more room, you upgrade, right? Now, why do sellers sell? The number one thing is life events. It's always the 9 Ds: death, divorce, diplomas, discretionary income, that kind of stuff. So that continues to be very, very consistent. Now, how long do our sellers think about selling before they actually enter into the process. Now, for our buyers, it's about 3 to 4 months from start to finish. For our sellers contemplate selling. They don't go on the market. They think about selling for the same time frame, 3 to 4 months. So, but this is 3 to 4 months before they get on the market. This is 3 to 4 months when they are prepping their home for sale, starting to interview realtors, starting to get an idea of pricing and values, looking up home valuation tools, those kind of things. That's the crucial time to like that's when you as a real estate professional, your spidey sense should be going off, because we want to be available to help them when they've really made that decision. But also don't rush them, right? They need 3 to 4 months to process this. Selling your home is a big emotional decision that for a lot of folks, it just takes some time to get through there. Now, as far as the actual selling experience, about half, a little over half, 54% of sellers have had at least one offer fall through. Please let your sellers know that that is pretty commonplace in our marketplace. Now, financing and inspections, those are the two biggest areas where deals fall through. Prepare your sellers. There's a lot of sellers that just get like emotionally beat up if they lose an offer, or if an offer backs out, that kind of stuff. Now, about 63% of our sellers right now are getting cash offers. Please prepare your sellers for that, because 63% of our sellers said, yes, we're getting cash offers, but no, they're kind of BS offers, right? There's a lot of investors and things out there that think that cash is going to be like a determining factor for most of our sellers. We see that like they understand that it's all cash at closing. So, and if you are a buyer buying with cash, it can be good to come in with cash, but to expect that a fair market sale will be driven by cash is not. We don't see where the data really supports that. If you are a distressed seller, cash may be an important factor, but for most of our just run of the mill average sellers, they reject most of those low ball cash offers, right? I'm not saying you can't make them, just say that that's really kind of how it is. Now, for our sellers, the most important priority when it comes, 58% of our sellers say that profit and profitability is the biggest factor in whether or not they're going to accept a sell an offer. And, being a seller myself, I can understand that, totally makes it. But it's not just money, right? So one is profit, the other is timing, right? Now, the other thing I found kind of interesting was, and it's a fairly small one, but like, almost 15% of sellers said that they really cared the caliber of person that bought their home. People are emotionally attached to their home. Now we can't sell based on those factors. I totally get it, but I just find that it's interesting to kind of look at the fact that for a lot of sellers, they really do care about the home, like deeply, and they want that home to go to someone that they feel is a good person, kind of thing. Now, are they paying closing costs? So about 44%, about 2/3 of sellers throw into the with closing costs, some of it, all of it, that kind of stuff. Roughly 67% are pitching in. So just kind of like when you're talking to your sellers and preparing them, that kind of stuff. What do our sellers value? They value floor plans, virtual tours on their listings. So as a listing agent, if you want to attract more sellers, make sure that you talk about floor plans and virtual tours, because they're paying attention to that in addition to photography, those kind of things. Now, are open houses the norm? Yes. They're like the number of homes that have open houses is actually dropped, right? Because and this is the weird oxymoron in real estate, right? Most open houses are way better for agents, right? Because when you hold an open house, it's an opportunity to talk to buyers that may want to buy the home for sure, but it's just a chance to build relationships, right? For a lot of our sellers, they think that it's like the shows out there where they can just kind of, like we're going to hold an open house and somebody's going to come in, they're going to buy it in 30 minutes and then we're going to close immediately, kind of thing. That's not very realistic. However, the sellers feel justified in asking you to do open houses. So plan on doing them and doing them effectively, because it can be a really, really good thing on there. Now, more and more sellers understand they need to leave the home for showings. They need to take pets out for showings. that kind of stuff. Most of our sellers make at least one home improvement on there. Now, the good news here, sellers tend to stick with their agents, right? Like if they have a relationship with a realtor, roughly 90% of the time, they're going to use that realtor to list their home. This shows the power of relationships for us in the real estate industry here. Now, if they don't have a relationship, then 63% of sellers use the first agent they meet face to face. So, like understanding that there's power in relationships and there's also power in being first, right? Now, most of our sellers are going to come from relationships. A much smaller piece comes from online, that kind of stuff. When you say like, what are the really important services that a realtor or real estate professional bring to sellers? Right? It's still going to be help me price the home effectively. I need help with timing, and I want you to market the home. Right? So they're definitely going to care a lot about negotiations in there as well, but those are going to be your main factors, and that kind of is similar from year to year to year. When it comes down to like what's most important, trustworthiness, honest, sincere, that kind of stuff. Your general reputation carries well beyond, and that's why like good people tend to do really well in our industry, right? Mean people suck, and the sellers see that too. Now, half of our sellers say that they were able to negotiate a little bit lower compensation with their agent. So it's about 47% say that they are getting a little bit better deal out there. I'm not getting into that. Most sellers feel that their agent's compensation was fair. Most of our buyers are using an agent. Most of our sellers are using an agent. Matter of fact, that number continues to go up and up and up. And I can totally understand why, right? We have to have a signed buyer brokerage agreement prior to showing any homes. And I don't know a lot of sellers that want to go into this market the way it is without representation in there. For our buyers who are more likely to not use an agent, those are the ones who are going for low value or investor type homes. But for most fair market, that's not the factor out there. Now, for our buyers, over half of our buyers use the first agent that they talk to face to face. That's a very important factor out there, right? Being the first, because the average the average consumer knows 3 to 4 agents, but it's the first agent they speak to face. So we need to make sure that we're looking at that and really being intentional about our engagement with our folks. Now, once you have been hired, it is very, very common for buyers and sellers to communicate with their agent at least once a week. Please do that, especially if someone's just starting the buying process, that kind of stuff. You need to be talking to your clients at least weekly. Other than the phone, the second most common is going to be text, but they want to hear from you first. So don't be afraid to pick up the phone on there. That's going to be the big deal. Now, what do they rank as some of the most valuable services that we provide? This one I found really interesting because the number one value that we seem to provide, or at least in the buyer's mind, is paperwork. And that to me is like, oh my gosh, that's the fact that paperwork's that intimidating, but also that they think that's the number one thing that we bring to the table. That one hurts my heart a little bit. Now, after that, of course, help me decide the offer, help me lead negotiations. And of course, like they want us to help them find the home. But as far as they think that paperwork is a really, really big deal. Now, the average buyer is viewing at least one open home. 15% though see 5 or more. So open houses are continuing to be an important factor for a lot of our buyers. A lot of our buyers like open houses because they don't have to have a buyer brokerage agreement to go look at houses. Now, when it comes to what do our buyers want, well, it starts off pretty interesting because the number one thing they want is very practical. Like, hands down, number one thing, give me AC. And I get it here in Georgia, right? First one goes to hell. You can see the sparks in the summer. I get it. So make sure AC is the number one thing. Other than AC, which is almost a given, then it comes down to, is it in my budget? Affordability continues to drive our market. It's going to be down to affordability on there. After that, bedroom, bathroom, and square footage, but all that is going to be determined by affordability, right? Now, I just kind of want to wrap up here with one last, question that they threw at our consumers and said, are you considering buying or selling without a real estate agent? And we have a higher percentage than in past years. Now, right now, about 40 something percent say that they would consider buying or selling without an agent. And that to me says, hey guys, you need to make sure that you are providing a lot of value. If we have buyers and sellers that are not, that are considering well, maybe I'll buy without an agent, maybe I'll sell without an agent, maybe I can do it myself, then that to me is a red flag, wake up call to the industry and to us in particular to say, look, what kind of value are you providing? What kind of services are you providing? It's very important. I find things some of the $1 million listing stuff and that kind of stuff where it's all, you know, high heels and butt tucks and boobs sticking out and all that kind of stuff. That to me is not representative of real estate, because all the folks I know in the real estate industry bust their butts. They work really, really hard for what they have, and they provide a ton of value. And that's what we need to be focusing on, is providing value for our clients every day, whether they're a buyer, whether they're a seller, whether they're both. That value we provide, that's what's going to propel us into the future, and that's what's going to protect your industry. So hope you guys have a great week. Love y'all. If I can be of any service, please call, text, smoke signals. Talk to you soon.